welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. Today, we're going to be talking about death rituals from around the world to honor the dead. We are not quite to Dia de los Muertos just yet. However, it is upcoming, so I'm hoping to have some great podcast episodes on how to say goodbye to your loved ones and honor those who have already left us. Now, I know my podcast is about grief, but I think honoring the dead is a good way to process your grief. So that's why we're going to talk about this. Before we start, though, I want to share a quote I heard last night from a Netflix show, which I'm so behind on everything, but there's a Netflix show that is a Black comedy called The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window with Kristen Bell. And so far I'm really digging it. I plowed through I think the first 3 episodes last night, but there was a scene I'm pretty sure it was episode 3, where she's at a grief support group and she's talking about losing her daughter. I won't go into too much because I don't want to bore you. And I really, after I'm done watching this, I do plan to do a review of the full show. But she has lost her daughter, very tragically. Again, I won't get into that right now. But she lost her daughter very, very tragically and is not coping with it very well. But she is in a grief support group and she's talking about her daughter and how it's been 3 years and she still has not accepted the loss. And she said, maybe I don't want to get better. Maybe if I'm afraid if I get better, I'll forget about her. That hit me so hard because I feel like that is the prime reason why I have put off dealing with some of my griefs in the past and currently sometimes too. I'm not going to lie. There's some griefs I just refuse to look at and refuse to think about because there's so much wrapped in it and they're very complex, and I'm not going to get into those today. But when you've lost somebody or lost something that has been so meaningful to you, and I feel like it's not just me and it's not just her. I think there's a lot of people that are afraid if they work on this grief, that means they're going to forget about their person that they've lost or their thing or their pet or whatever, which we all know isn't the case. And even I know that, yet I still sometimes I'm afraid to work on my grief because I'm afraid I'll forget those people, right? Okay. So anyway, back on to this article. And again, this is different death rituals from around the world. I've actually read a few different books on death rituals all around the world and in different cultures. And I just find this so incredibly fascinating and angering at the same time because I'm going to pop on my soapbox for just a second and I'll pop right back off again, I promise. But I think it's no big secret now that I do not like how we treat our dead in Western cultures. I don't like how we treat our dying in Western cultures. And this isn't everybody. This isn't, every single person, but this feels to be the norm that as people get old and are dying, we stick them away because we don't want to look at it. We don't want to deal with it. And we don't want to admit our own mortality. So we kind of push people off into these nursing homes to let other people deal with it. And I'm not shaming anybody that puts their parents in a nursing home. My parents actually will probably prefer that. And I will put them in a nursing home because we have a culture where we're busy. We don't have the luxury of being home all day to take care of our aging parents. And I understand that. That's beside the point. I feel like, and then once somebody we love has passed away, we pay a industry, and don't get me started on the funeral industry. I will get so angry. We pay people to do all the work so that we don't have to. And again, I'm not shaming anybody for not wanting to wash and redress their dead loved one. That's not for everybody. But I feel like we lose a connection with our loved ones and with our own mortality by separating ourselves so much from it. And it's just become such an ingrained thing in our head and in our culture that we just don't realize that's not how it has to be. And not only that, we look at other cultures who are way more hands-on with their dead relatives, and we stick our nose up at them and say, ew, gross, icky. It's not icky. It's love and honor. Okay, see, I told you I'm going to get on my soapbox. All right, I will pop back down off my soapbox now, and we'll just discuss these. My soapbox might come back. Sorry. I have a lot of soap, you guys, so there's a lot of boxes of soap to stand upon. I'm also really short, so I have to stand on things to be tall. Anyway, so this article just discusses 5 different rituals in different cultures, but there are many. Like I said, I read an entire book. There's one called From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty, who is my patron saint, and God love her. You are a beautiful human. She is what got me to where I am today. She wrote a book called From Here to Eternity, I think I just said that, that is about death and dying in different cultures all over the world. I cannot recommend this book enough. It is amazing. I feel like people are starting to learn about sky burials, which is not in this article, by the way. Quick tangent. Sky burials are what they do. Most people think of this with like Tibetan monks or up in the Himalayas or in really, really high mountainous villages. There, you can't bury your dead because you're on rocky mountain cliffs and there's no way to dig into the ground. And cremating isn't really an option either because there's not a lot of wood around to be building fires, things like that. So they basically take their deceased, cut them up, and leave them out on these altars for the buzzards to come and eat them. And I can hear some people going, ew, gross. But I think that's beautiful in a lot of ways because there are some beliefs that say the vultures would take those pieces and ascend them up into heaven, things like that. But also, I mean, come on, guys, circle of life. There's jokes about us being worm food. Why not have our deceased bodies? We're not using them. Why not have them go to a little bit of good? Anyway, that is not in this article. I just wanted to throw that out there. And so we'll move on. I'm going to skip number 1 and come back to that because I don't like that it starts off with the first practice. We'll come back, I promise. So the second one in this article is finger amputations. Now there is the Dani tribe, and I believe it is pronounced Dani. I found a couple different pronunciations, but is a people from the central highlands of Western Papua New Guinea. In that region, the women of the Dani tribe in Papua New Guinea cut off the tips of their fingers in a funeral ritual to mourn the loss of a family member or loved one. Sounds weird, right? It is a cultural norm, but they cut off the tip of their finger. Why it's mainly women that do this, it's not really clear on that, at least not in this article, and I apologize. I looked a little bit more into this, but I never did find an answer as to why it was only women that do this. But it's just a physical display to grief. If somebody's walking around without a tip of their finger, you know that they've lost somebody that's close to them. There's a whole ritual around it. They don't just walk up and snip your finger off. They basically tie a string around the top part of your finger, leave it on there for 30 minutes or so until it goes numb, and then they use an axe to cut it off. And this sounds a little brutal, so I probably should have put a trigger warning on this. Anyway, basically, it's also rooted in a religious belief that indicates that perhaps cutting the finger off can ward off that deceased person's restless spirit and let them go free. So, but I'm all about those outwards expression of grief. You know, I had a therapist once who encouraged me to, if I really wanted to show my grief, like be outward about it. Wear black, have a black band, something, just if that's what means a lot. And there's some great things on Victorian culture where they made jewelry out of hair and teeth. And again, this is one of those things people now are like, ew. But back in the day, that was totally normal. And I think it's beautiful. Anyway, I also have a necklace with my cat's ashes in it I wear all the time. So, but I like those outward, because that means you're not afraid of showing your grief. You're not afraid of saying, I'm grieving to everyone around you, which is beautiful in a way. All right. The next one is blindfolded funerals. This is in the Philippines, but the blindfolds are not on the mourners. They put them on the deceased. This is for the indigenous people of Benguet, and I apologize if I pronounce that incorrectly. Again, I looked it up, but you never know. Some of the stuff you look up on the Googles is not always correct. So, Benguet, sorry if that's incorrect. They will put blindfolds on the deceased at their funerals, and it's just kind of a way to protect them from the world around them, the suffering world, as this says. And this is interesting, the deceased is cleaned and blindfolded and tied to a chair, not like bound, but it's just tied to have them be in a seating position and placed in the main entrance of their home. Their hands and legs are put together to keep their body up in a sitting position, and they leave them there for 8 days. And then during those 8 days, there's rites and rituals that happen, things like that. But part of the reason why they put them in a chair in a seating position. So we'll get into the clinics of this, but we all know what rigor mortis is. Once your body gets stiff, it's a little hard to loosen. It can be loosened. I've learned so much about this, you guys. But it's a lot of work. But they put them in the chairs so that they're already in kind of a fetal position, because that's how they put them when they put them to rest. They put them in a fetal position. So there you go. They are blindfolded to blind them from the suffering of the world so that they can move on to the next. Again, I think that is beautiful. I think that's really cool. So the next up is the hanging coffins. This I just love. This is the Igorot people of the Philippines. And this is a practice that's still done today, which is another thing. I just love these traditions that have been, this says it dates back over 2,000 years. And the fact that this is a tradition that's been going on that long, I love this. Anyway, so it sounds to me from what I read here, and this article's real short. It just has little blips. So I did a little bit of extra research on each of these just to make sure it's verified and, I'm getting a little more out of it. But the people carve their own coffins while they're still alive, obviously. This one's from hollowed out logs, things like that. But they can put on their own designs, and they will put in beautiful, intricate designs that can represent anything, whatever. But they make their own little special designs. And then once they've died, they're placed inside their coffin, and they are suspended off the side of a cliff or over a cave. And I've seen pictures of this. This is what made it so cool. The article itself had a picture of this at the top, but I went and looked at some other pictures just because I was so fascinated by just seeing all these coffins hanging off the side of a cliff. It was just really cool to me. But it's not just hanging them off the side of the cliff. They're put in specific orders. Basically, the height of the coffin represents the status of the individual. So, male community leaders or priests, whatever, the higher up in the society, the higher up their coffin is hanging. So the lower in society, the lower your coffin is hanging. It seems like there's really only one town, Sagada, and I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, so I'm sorry, where they still do this hanging coffin ritual. But there's some other cultures in China and Indonesia that have also done this or something similar. So I just thought that was really cool. Okay. Number 5, or number 4 in this case, are death beads. B-E-A-D-S, beads. This is a practice. It's a newer, this is what's cool, is this is a newer thing. So this isn't something that's been around for thousands of years, but it's a newer trend, I guess you would call it now, in South Korea, where people are transforming their loved ones' ashes into beads, like beautiful, shiny, and colorful beads. And this looks like it's been growing in popularity since early 2000s. So again, God, that was 22 years ago, you guys. So, but this is still relatively new. And I've heard of this in a lot of Asian cultures and places on the east side of the planet, in Eastern cultures, where they've run out of space for burials, and burial is becoming illegal. Or in some cases, you will rent a burial plot for, say, usually like 50 years. And then at the end of the 50 years, you're taken out of that. And they will either, if you can pay for another 50 years, you can pay for something different, but typically you're just cremated after that. But again, they're running out of space because, there's only so much space. People continue to die. It's just how it goes. More and more people are moving to cremation because of that. But this I just thought was really cool, that they are turning their ashes into beads. And those are things that you can keep forever, and they can be family heirlooms, like here's grandma holding up a necklace, things like that. But basically they take the ashes and crystallize them into beads, and the process is pretty quick too. This is something I found when my brother passed away. He was cremated, and there were different options. We just had an urn because we were putting him in our columbarium, which I think I mentioned in a previous episode. We put him in it's basically like a giant headstone that's like really deep, and it's got these 4 little compartments. I call them lockers. And his ashes are in an urn that's in his little section. And then there's 3 other for my mom, my dad, and for me. That's another story for another day. But I've saw all sorts of options at the funeral home for what you can do with people's ashes. You can get any kind of urn you want, obviously. Heck, you can buy some off Etsy. But you can have them made into like paperweights. You can have them made, I know a lot of people have seen them being made into diamonds so that you can have them set into jewelry, be it a ring, necklace, earrings, whatever. Which I like that, but at the same time, I just have this image in my head of being mugged one day and somebody taking my diamond ring off my finger that's my mother, and that would devastate me in ways I can't even tell you. I would probably die because I wouldn't give it up. But anyway, plus I just have this thing about physical items. Neither here nor there. But yeah, the beads idea, I think that's really cool, and you can hang them around your house, you can wear them, whatever. That's really nice. Okay, so the first thing that was on this list, just hear me out. You all are like, oh my God, what is coming? Exactly what you think it is. Endocannibalism. So the article says, and I went back to research this a little bit, the earliest instances of cannibalism happening has been like hundreds of thousands of years, a long time ago. But some anthropologists have found that cannibalism is used not just for survival or for funsies. The Wari people of Brazil and the Foray tribe in Papua New Guinea, two examples of tribes that consume their deceased community members. It's a religious, cultural practice, and it's a way to mourn socially. Now, specifically for this, I'll just read what the article says. For the Foray tribe, the cannibalistic tradition calls on women and children to consume the flesh of the deceased people. Everything except the gallbladder is removed from the body. Remains are mixed with ferns and cooked in tubes of bamboo that women and children both prepare and consume. I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything why it's only women that do this and the men do not. I wish I could. I've looked at a few different articles. So if you know anything about this, please tell me. I'm super curious why this is only women that do this. But it's viewed as a symbol of love and grief mixed together. There is a downside to this. Some medical researchers are finding that some of the tribe members might be getting degenerative diseases, a specific one called kuru, because of their cannibalistic practices. But basically, it's a virus that infects the central nervous system, and it's once somebody has it, obviously eating their flesh will pass it on to you. So anyway, so that's why I didn't want to lead off with that one. And I'm so open about different death practices and funeral practices that, like I said, some of these things, like the finger amputation. Well, if my husband dies tomorrow, I'm not going to cut off my finger. I will not. That's just not something I feel the need to do. But I can find the beauty in that. And I'm not going to lie, I struggle with this cannibalism thing a little bit. Now, I can symbolically see the beauty in this. And symbolically see how this, and especially if it's a social thing where they have a feast and everybody's all gathered together eating grandma. That sounds so morbid, but I can kind of see the honor and the beauty in that, even though this is obviously I'm not going to eat anybody I know either. Unless that's something they really want me to do. I still don't think I could do it, but I've heard of people so wrapped up in their grief they will eat some of the ashes of their cremated loved one. And again, I can see the beauty in that. This is not something I would do, and I ethically can't. I'm struggling here, you guys. I ethically don't see a benefit in eating human flesh. Okay, that's me, and I am absolutely not shaming this ritual whatsoever. Again, I can see the beauty in this, and I can see why this is a practice that has happened. It's not something I would do. So there you have it. I hope talking about cannibalism and eating your dead didn't turn off any of my listeners or cause me to lose any of my listeners. All 10 of you, I need you. Again, these are all different cultures from all over the world. And there's the book I told you about as well, From Here to Eternity. Please read that if you are curious. I love learning about other cultures and what other cultures do and why. And there's just such a beauty to how other cultures currently and throughout history have treated their dead and their dying and their grief outside of that. So that's why this article really stuck to me, and I really, really wanted to share it. And this is more along the lines of death and dying versus just grief, but honoring your dead is a way of grieving. So I felt like it fit in. That's about it. I hope You didn't hear, my neighbor's doing something with power saws. There's a helicopter circling around. So I hope you haven't been getting too much background noise in this. I'm going to try to edit it out as best I can. But that is about all I have for this episode. I hope you got something out of this. And I'm really curious. Please. I'm always curious about my listeners. So please reach out to me. You can go through my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com. You can email me, nikkideathdoula@gmail.com. Yeah. And those of you who know me personally, shoot me a text, send me something through Facebook, you know. You can also find me on Facebook, Nikki the Death Doula. But I would love to hear if your family or if your culture, if you're from a different culture than your white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Christian religion background, I would love to hear how, if you do something different to honor your dead or to process your grief. Please, I would love, love, love to hear about it. And with your permission, I'd share it on the podcast. Without your permission, I would not. Don't worry. But either way, I would love to hear about it. So please reach out to me. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot the death deck. The death deck, you guys. The death deck. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to do that this week. All right, so the death deck. All right, shuffling up the cards. Whoops. Oh, dang it. I hate that when I get one backwards. I'll fix it later. Okay. I'm OCD that way. All right, death deck. I'm going to draw one at random, and we have... If despairingly lost on a desert island, I would A. Expect family to search indefinitely. This is me we're talking about. B. Be happy knowing they painstakingly searched for about a year. Or C. Hope the family assumed I died and threw me a fabulous celebration of life party. I think I'm going to have to go with B. You know, I wouldn't want them to look forever. I mean, here's the thing. If I'm out there, yes, I'd want them to look forever. Like, please, oh my God, find me. But I would also hate to think that they gave up everything to just keep looking for me. So I'd probably go with B. I don't know. What about you? I'm going to shut up now. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this a little bit. If not, I'm sorry. I'll have something different next week. We are coming up on Dia de los Muertos, so I'll probably have something on that. I'm very excited. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. As always, all the money I receive through Patreon goes directly to a fund so that I can provide pro bono work to those who need my services and cannot afford to pay for them. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful week. It's fall. I love it. I made a big pot of chili. I'm going to go have dinner. Thank you so much. Just remember, your feelings are valid. You're never alone. And grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief was brought to you by me. You can find me online at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Today's episode was produced by me. Research and scripts written by me. Your host is me. Editing and sound design also me. Music is not me. Music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. License information can be found at filmmusic.io/standard-license. Special thank you to my best friend and husband for constantly reassuring me that I don't suck.